Like I mentioned to him before we came on, as I started reading through his bio, his byline, kept getting more nervous and more nervous as I look at the works he's been involved in. Joel Soisson on with us today. Did I get close?
Perfectly said.
How about that? Joel, first off, thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure. Very excited.
Now, we've talked about several movies that you've worked on before. We may get to those in a bit, but got a new movie available on digital on the 1st called My Best Worst Adventure. Tell our listeners a little bit where this came from for you.
Well, I have, as you probably noticed, Cameron, done quite a few horror films and action films and teen comedies and basically what we call genre films. And they've been good to me, and I've tried to be good to them, but it doesn't really scratch the itch of a filmmaker to do a sort of a real story about real people and real circumstances. And what I found when I was shooting in Thailand, a little horror thriller in Bangkok, that the producer there had this wonderful story about growing up in Thailand, in the north of the country near Cambodia, a tiny little town where they had this bizarre sport where they would race water buffaloes. And those suckers are fast. They're fast as horses on the sprint. And what these kids do is they climb on top of them and they race each other, dozens at a time. And it's like you're sitting atop a stampede and hanging on for dear life. No bridles or nothing, nothing to grip, no saddles. It's bareback and it's just balls out. And if you fall off, it's you're going to get mashed. So I just thought as a milieu for a story, but also as a sports story, a sports movie, and just a different take on sort of the Seabiscuit, National Velvet, all those old horse racing stories that we grew up with and loved. And yet it also appealed to my horror side, because what you're really talking about is this girl from LA, a 13-year-old girl who has trouble with her father and gets shipped off to her quirky grandmother in northern Thailand. And it is like being dropped on an alien planet. You are just in the middle of all of these strangers. You don't understand them. They're weird, they're dangerous, and you're really in a struggle for survival.
Now, for you, you talked about getting the concept and the idea while you were in Thailand. Is it from the travels that you've had over the years that have maybe inspired some of the writings so far?
Quite a lot. I mean, inspired both the ideas and the writing side, but also the how to get things done side. We have this notion in America that we got it all figured out. We have the technology, we have the toys, we have the smarts, but a lot of these countries that don't have the resources that we do have the skills to make up for it. It's like, when dogs became domesticated, they got a lot dumber than the wolves because they just got, everything was delivered to them on a plate, And I feel like that as an American sometimes. I've gotten sort of sloppy. And I'm always thinking when I'm overseas, especially in what we kind of charmingly call the third world countries, and it's been a real eye-opener. And that's part of why I wanted to do this movie, is to sort of narrow the cultural divide of like us and them and the haves and the have-nots and all those things that just seem to be dividing us up, like, hugely.
Right.
So so I'm always inspired, and you just, as most of us know, you walk into a bar and you sit down and you talk to a stranger, he's going to inform your life in a way that will make you different from the way you walked in. And that's, you might not be sober either, but that's a different part of it.
That's a whole nother tangent of it.
Yes.
Now, Joel, this last year, what are maybe some of the things that you have learned about yourself, having to spend more time alone and separate from other people? What are maybe some of the new inspirations or something?
I learned that I am a comfortable introvert, for one thing, because the isolation was nurturing to me. I just, part of, I guess, the reason being that my work life is such a social, you know, um, life that you're constantly bouncing off other people, and that's great. And I do enjoy their company, but to learn about quiet, we live in a very noisy culture, don't you think? I mean, it just like
Very.
the media and the people and the things happening around us and the constant assaults on our senses. And I got quiet in 2020. I mean, that was just a remarkable thing. You know, grieving over the suffering and trying to reach out at times to sort of help us in any way that I could, but also reveling in that solitude, like being on a desert island and knowing sooner or later you're going to get rescued, right?
Now, the story in My Best Worst Adventure, the character, I noticed, I watched the trailer a moment ago, a lot of silence in this. And in the writing process, is the silent parts, the descriptive parts, are those harder to write than the actual dialogue parts?
That's a wonderful question. Yes, but it's also it's a good challenge because I'm not quite old enough to remember the silent film days, but I love them. And I love them because that's what film is. It's a visual medium. I mean, talkies kind of came in and messed things up a little bit, but I love the idea of people expressing themselves through their actions, and they're quiet. And so I deliberately made the two lead children in this movie, mute. Neither of them ever speaks for different reasons, but obviously there's story reasons involved, but also from just a filmmaking reason. It fascinated me to have these two kids, one from Thailand and one from America, bonding and communicating in ways that sort of bridge that cultural and language gap, and doing it beautifully and effectively. And I watched those two kids grow toward each other through the process of the movie in that same way. It was just a wonderful evolution to watch how people, when they don't have a common language, how they truly effectively can communicate.
That's true. That's true. And for you, does traveling around the world and seeing the way that others interact, not only with themselves, but like you, I'm sure you can't speak every language everywhere you go, but the communication there as well, does it give you hope that we really are closer as people than they want to make us out to be?
Um, I just would urge anybody who is suspicious of anyone anywhere to travel there and meet them. And there isn't a place on the planet I have landed yet that the universal language of a smile didn't just break down every barrier that you had put up in front of yourself the moment you landed. It's yes, that's the antidote, I think, is just meeting those people that are different from you, both in America and elsewhere. But I'm one of those guys. I live in a bubble. I mean, everybody within 10 miles of me speaks, looks, and acts exactly like me, and has the same politics and has the same view of the world. And that's scary.
Because you know your politics.
I do. I do. I don't need anybody really reinforcing them. I need a few people to come and go, you know what? That may not work for everybody.
That's pretty good. Now we've talked about some of the other movie projects that you've worked on, and we also talked about traveling around the world. What is maybe one of the highlights that you look back at on your travels as far as a movie was concerned? Was there one that the location or maybe the timing of it really sets apart?
Um, I did quite a few movies in Romania, um, starting around the time that just shortly after the revolution there,
Mm,
throughout the communist socialist government, and to watch a society build itself up from the wreckage of what it had cast aside was fascinating. The upheavals we have had, at least in my lifetime, don't compare in any way to what it's like to have your whole fabric of society torn apart. And then you have to figure out, like, let's make it up now. Well, what is it we want to be? And in the middle of that, you've got me, this schmuck from America, going, I just want to, you know, get a camera crew together and make this movie that I wrote, and you know, who's aboard? And trying not at first, trying to separate my needs from theirs, and then realizing that not only are they kind of inseparable, but they actually ended up informing my movie in a way that I thought was really enriching. And so I ended up sort of absorbing that whole cultural anxiety into the film. And it was kind of a horror thriller film. It was one of the Prophecy series, if you've ever heard of those. But it was one of my favorite ones, because I didn't try to be like an American making an American movie in a foreign land. I just thought, okay, let's throw that all away and let's become Romanian.
Now, the My Best Worst Adventure, without having the dialogue and all that, having the expressions, how hard was getting the expression that you were looking for?
Sometimes difficult, but usually not, because the two kids, one of them, the boy, was a professional actor from way back. And so I did have a translator, so I could give a cue and he would immediately, like, it was in his, you know, wheelhouse. He could do just about anything, drop of hat. I need a tear, I need a smile, I need this, that. I need, you know, true, you know, inner suffering. He could deliver. The girl had never acted a day in her life, and her name's Lily Patra, and she just was skipping school one day because she's a bit of a rebel. And I think she was at the time living with her grandmother and having some conflicts, just like the girl in our story. And she walked into an audition like, what the hell? Let me check it out. Let me see what this is all about. I don't know. And she stood in, and since it's a mute part, she couldn't really audition, right? She couldn't say, right. I couldn't give her a bunch of lines to say. So she just stood in the front of the camera, and she just talked about herself and about her life. And it just came alive. And I realized, okay, the trajectory of this girl's story is the trajectory of my character in the movie. So if I can basically just get her to transplant that character that she already has into this narrative line, I'm going to get something. And I got 5 times more than I expected, because that's what an actress does. They pull out of themselves what they need for the character. And she did it in spades. I mean, she was truly like one of my most proud, and it's arrogant to say she was a discovery, because a lot of people were involved in fashioning her into what she is, but she's a true find. And I would not have had a quarter of the movie that I have if it weren't for her sort of innate talent.
Now, what is it in the audition that sets one apart from another? I don't think I've ever had the opportunity to ask somebody about that audition process. Is it just the it factor with the read?
I wish I could give you a definitive answer, because I'm always battling with other people about, it's like music, you know, you like a song, I don't, and vice versa. It is an alchemy, and you it's intuitive, and you sort of feel it. One thing I in most of my career, I've sat in a room with actors auditioning in person, and because of distance, especially these films that are being prepped in another country, or because of COVID now, nobody auditions in person. They put themselves on camera, like you and me are talking right now. And you would think that puts a distance on the relationship. You'd think that would be worse. It's better, because when you're in the room, you're influenced by the person. Do you like them or don't you? right? And you warm them up in the beginning, you're having a little chat, and then after
Right.
they finish, because I don't want to be this jerk. All right, thank you. Next. Like what's up? How you doing? And you're trying to establish a little bit of a rapport. But what that does is it seeps under your skin, and it influences your process. Whereas I'm getting now a picture of you, how you would be in my movie, because the movie sees through the same camera lens that I'm seeing through right now.
Right.
And so that's this weird thing. And you see it in superstar actors. When you meet them in person, it's like, really? I had Robert Redford walk into my office years ago, accidentally. I wish he was there to see me, but um, um, I barely recognized him. And he was so small, not in stature, but kind of in stature, but in just not being at all somebody I would ever think twice to look at again. It was just, but then he's on screen and of course lights it up. And that's what the camera finds sometimes that we don't. So it's really important to look at people through a lens.
So technology has actually helped in that regards.
And distance,
Yeah.
the kind of separation that you get that allows you to sort of assess a person in a way that a movie does. And yeah, I find that fascinating. It took me a while to understand it, because I was like, why are these people not good in my movie when they were brilliant in the audition, and they're doing the exact same thing? What happened? And it was because what went in the lens was different from what went in my eyes.
Wow. Wow. Now, has there been any that you saw them walk in and maybe after they were cast, they really blew you away, and you were like, where
Oh
was that
yeah.
in the audition?
Yeah. I mean, it happens every which way. You'll have somebody that does a brilliant audition, and then you want to bring him back for the boss, the executives or
Right.
the studio execs or whoever. And like any of us, you panic a little, and all that whatever it is, the itness goes away. And then the execs going like, really? That was your pick? Well, yeah, but really it wasn't that way. Okay, next. So it's all, I'm sure that with all sorts of careers, that the world is littered with deserving, excellent people that, but for one quirk of a moment, you're there and they're there. And it's it's Darwinism, I guess. Some people get eaten and it's not their fault.
There you go. Now, has the work on My Best Worst Adventure, has that maybe inspired you to do more works aside from the horror genre that you've felt so comfortable
Yes,
with?
yes, it absolutely. Although my next film the shoots in September is sort of a horror comedy, but so I'm not throwing down the spurs, but my push now is to do like films. They don't have to be like message movies, but movies that have some sort of a heart and soul to them, that inspire people coming out, instead of just going, man, that guy died in a really cool way when the truck ran over him and then he blew up. Okay, don't get me wrong, that can be cool.
Oh yeah.
Right, but this sort of feeds my soul, and I'm getting to the age where I'd rather just, instead of just feeding my stomach, I'm doing a little bit more.
There you go. Now, the My Best Worst Adventure is going to be available on digital coming up September
Yes,
1st.
I'm learning all these new fancy things. In my day, they you went in a theater and then you went to DVD or VHS, and I could just say go to Blockbuster. Now there's so many streaming platforms and pay-per-view. It's like what I can basically recommend is, we have a Facebook page, My Best Worst Adventure. Google it, and tell your TV or use your little QWERTY device to find My Best Worst Adventure. And after September 1st, it'll show up. And then later on in the month or early the following, it will be then streaming on most of your regular platforms that if you subscribe to them, then you can just grab it off that. But yeah, it's just, that's what I do now. I don't know how any of this stuff works. I just type in the name of the movie and somehow miraculously it pops up.
Well, that's good stuff. Well, Joel, it has truly been a privilege to have the chance to visit with you today, sir. I'm looking forward to seeing the entire film myself, and hopefully as more works come up, we'll catch up again real soon.
I'm really looking forward to hearing this episode because I can't wait to listen to the other dudes you collected for it.
Well, Joel, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Cameron. Talk soon.